Everyone. Welcome back to the Modern Mindfulness series, using the body-mind connection to amplify your life and also feel more balanced, connected, and free. I'm your host, Rebekka Mars, and today we have Lizzie Lassiter. Hi, Lizzie.
Hi, Rebekka.
So happy to have you. And let me tell the audience a little bit about you. So trained as a designer, Lizzie Lassiter teaches yoga internationally and via the online platform she co-founded. Lizzie sometimes jokes that she's been practicing yoga since the womb because her mom, Judith Hanson Lassiter, has been teaching yoga since 1971. Yoga and meditation were a constant presence throughout Lizzie's San Francisco childhood, but she began practicing for herself at age 18 on her first trip to India. It was there a decade later that she spent a month alone finding silence. That experience grew into a daily Instagram series about loving kindness. You can follow that at lizzie.lassiter. And currently Lizzie lives in the Alps with her Austrian husband. Such a beautiful story. So welcome to the series, Lizzie. Is there anything else other than that amazing bio that you want to share about you, about anything kind of more detail or elaborating?
I'm just so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I am never cease to be amazed at the magic of the internet, connecting. You're in Florida, I'm in Austria, we're speaking to people around the world, and I think this is the future of yoga, mindfulness, education, and I'm just so pleased and grateful to be a part of it.
Yes, I agree. And our topic today is meditation for millennials, and what a cool way to do it here on an interview summit. Like you said, like around the world. And I interviewed a lady in Australia 2 days ago. I have you in Austria, and it's just, it's so fun. And it's like you said, it's like you're right next door. And that's, I think, the next wave of this, as we'll probably talk on here in a little bit. But speaking of meditation for millennials, the term millennial, it's definitely used a lot. But how would you define that term of millennial?
So I think demographically speaking, a millennial is someone born in the late 1970s or early 1980s until the mid 1990s. And it has to do with being a digital native, someone who was kind of born into technology, someone for whom a cell phone was part of their early social life, and maybe online dating is some of the first dating they've done, or that technology and everyday life were not separate for us. And I think, so that's the kind of demographic understanding. But when I teach about this idea of meditation for millennials, I like to expand and recognize that some students are slightly older than that definition if you were born in the early 1970s. And to me, I want to broaden the definition slightly to also include, to me, a millennial can also be in spirit someone who spends a lot of their time in the digital world. So they're often urban, they're often overscheduled, busy, rich lives. They're someone who's constantly has the iPhone in the hand, and maybe they work in a way that there is less and less differentiation between on and off. And it's a kind of lifestyle. A millennial lifestyle is perhaps one in which it's not the 1950s where you have clearly differentiated gender roles in terms of who's doing the house, who's doing the kids, who's earning the money. It's all now a big mix. And of course, with that, with the feminist revolution that our mothers fought hard for, comes the burden of the messiness and the undifferentiated expectations. So I think millennials are people living in cities today, mostly in the Western world, although I was just in Beijing and they're highly developed. So I would say in urban centers in the developed world, where the digital life and the home life and the work life are all bleeding into one. And these people, us, I'm one of you, we are all so in desperate need of silence.
Mm-hmm. Yes, let's honor the silence. I love that. And I had no idea where you were going to go with that answer. And, I had probably what a lot of people think of millennials being like this age demographic. And I love how you just wove in. Basically, we're all a bunch of millennials. Anybody that is anybody right now has an iPhone or has a smartphone, with these computers in our hands. And it's a lot. It's a lot of output of energy, and it's output. So yeah.
And I want to honor, of course, I mean, because of the medium that we're using now, I consider that we're speaking to, if you're watching this, I'm speaking to you because you have the time, energy, and disposable income to be thinking about mindfulness. I do want to recognize that there are another 6 billion people on the planet who perhaps aren't in that position. And I'm aware of that, but that's, and I have empathy and my gratitude for being where I am, but I don't want to speak as though I assume everyone is in this position.
Yes. Thank you for that. Absolutely. And very much a privilege to be able to even be talking about this in a way, if we want to also feel that. And at the same time, then yes, it is just this new way of life, and the rat race and the routine. And like you saw in China, it's not just, in one country, it's definitely a global thing right now. And yeah, the millennials are everywhere. And then there is another population. And sometimes it feels like, oh, I wish I could chuck the phone out the door and not turn anything on. And it's a challenge to do that. And I think that's what I hear a lot from people, whether it's in yoga classes or just in conversation. People do kind of struggle sometimes of feeling, they have this yearning to have the silence and to hit pause and to unplug. And I think just the rising up right now of yoga and meditation and things, evidence of that, which is also a very good thing, that people are coming into that consciousness. So just another question to ponder, do we really need meditation in a time like this?
Desperately. Yes, we desperately need meditation. In a time like this, exactly as you're saying, we are in a time of overconsumption on sort of every level. We're consuming digitally. We're consuming in the physical realm with Amazon and this kind of, I heard this great word recently, affluenza, which is like influenza, but affluence, those two words. So
Wow.
The kind of symptoms of being too wealthy. And in fact, yoga and mindfulness are, it is a luxury to have time to think about consciousness and the state of your consciousness. I was just teaching a women's retreat with my mom at the Yoga Journal conference in Colorado, and we acknowledged and we said, we're all profoundly lucky because we're not carrying water 3 miles a day for our children. I mean, to have time to examine your inner life, I think number one is a huge luxury. But in terms of specifically answering your question, why we need meditation, because of this degree of overconsumption. And in my experience, it's accelerating. So it seems like every 6 months there's a new app on my phone with a new little circle of notifications. There's more and more input. So from the digital, from the physical, from food, I sometimes think, when I was a kid, I'm not I don't know, maybe that's not the right example, but it seems like nowadays, wherever you go, they serve food. Like at every time of the day, if you go to a meeting, there's bagels. If you go to a gallery opening, there's canapé and white wine. I mean, it's like the opportunity to eat during the day is now 15 times almost, it's like this kind of constant consumption of food, content. So our nervous systems are completely overloaded. And we no longer have structured ways in our rhythm of our day, like a siesta, where we consciously withdraw from the exterior. And in fact, it's even, as I said, accelerating if you stand at the bus stop and wait for 2 minutes, or you wait in line at the grocery store or the subway. All these kind of interstitial moments in our urban lives now, that moment is now filled with the phone. So it's even more, it's not filled with daydreaming or resting, or there was this concept of the flaneur 100 years ago, which was like walking around a city and looking at other people. Like, we don't even do this anymore. You know, we're looking at the other people on Instagram, thousands of miles away. So I believe and know from the laboratory of my own experience that we desperately need meditation, because I desperately need meditation. When I consciously decide to sit in a seated meditation or take a restorative pose, for me, that is literally the only time in my day when I'm conscious, so when I'm not asleep, when I don't have anything coming in. And I think that this time is essential for integration. And what's beneath integration, layers of healing, and also for me as a designer, creativity. Like, if there's no silence and no emptiness, nothing new can come.
I love that. Yeah. And we're all creative. I think people also, you know, they think, oh, but I'm not creative. But you are. You know, everybody has that current of creativity. And exactly, until you can find space. And it shows up in so many ways too. And just as I've experimented through the years of, you know, of maybe clinging to a job or a person, and I think a lot of people can probably connect to this because it's not a new idea by any means, but you cut one thing out and then there's all of a sudden it's replaced nearly immediately a lot of times, because it's just that one thing that you're not giving yourself enough space. And the minute you have space, then something even better shows up. And it's that same concept of just unplugging or meditating or just doing everything that you just mentioned. You don't know the goodness that will even come in when you give yourself that space. And then we have people just, you know, 70% of our countries like on prescription drugs here in the US, and it's just this crazy epidemic of stress-related everything. And, you know, then people are just so worried about their health and their friends and their family. It's like, unplug for a minute, you know, better health, better things will come. We can just take a step back and just, like you said, this underneath these layers, there's even more that can rise up. And I love that. And you mentioned yoga. So yoga and meditation, I think a lot of times people do think that they go hand in hand. And as you know, coming from yoga backgrounds, we get that. But as you were explaining, if you're just explaining to our audience, you know, how are yoga and meditation connected, if you consider them connected?
Oh, of course. So in our culture now, kind of popular culture, the word yoga has become synonymous with actually one corner of broader yoga. So yoga itself has sort of 8 parts. And asana, the physical postures, is one of those 8. So we could say it's 1/8 of yoga itself. And another one of those 8ths is meditation. So in fact, meditation is integral. It's already embedded in the larger system of yoga. But in the West, when we started taking yoga from India, I would say, you know, kind of in our living memory, my mother, for example, studied with Mr. Iyengar, whose teacher was Krishnamacharya. And Krishnamacharya was really the grandfather of modern yoga. And a lot of these Western students went and studied with Mr. Iyengar, Pattabhi Jois, Desikachar, and they took back and began to spread in the 1970s and 80s up until today a very physical yoga, the asana. And the meditation practices and the pranayama, the breathing practices, are in fact considered slightly more grown up, and they're more subtle. So the asana practices, the physical practices, which we all think of when we think of yoga on Instagram, the poses, the making shapes with our body, those are in fact seen in the larger system of yoga simply as preparations for meditation. So you could even say meditation is sort of the main course, and we've gotten stuck on the appetizer in the West.
I love that. The main course of meditation. Yes, yes. So yes, so many yeses there. And since I teach yoga as well, I feel like every single class I'm like trying so hard to remind people of this. And it's really neat to watch students, and you instruct as well, and go to the conferences and lead workshops and things. And it's just such a beautiful moment when people get it, and you still meet the people. And I've definitely got to the point where whatever gateway moment they have of getting into yoga, it's beautiful. I used to kind of fight it like, no, you're getting it all wrong. But now, it's, yes, you want to go take a yoga class at a crazy gym or something, sure. And they get the taste of meditation, even if it's just for a millisecond. Some people still leave before Shavasana, you hear of all those things, which is a whole other topic, right?
No, but I agree with you. I like what you're saying. And I think it's a sort of paradox right now in our culture. And I think yoga needs to evolve to meet the practitioner. My practice needs to feed me and feed my life, fit my life where I am today. I'm not here to serve my practice. So it's a kind of paradox because we're growing more sedentary as a society. But yet we need more true stillness. So I understand completely why sweaty flow power yoga is attractive. And in fact, it was, I spent 5 years doing Ashtanga yoga very seriously in my early 20s. So it's not that I belittle that in any way. And I can see how it fits a certain need in our culture. If you're sitting at a desk all day, driving in a car and sitting in a desk, this is a wonderful 90-minute antidote for you. But the stillness I'm talking about and that I teach, and one of, I think, the magical gifts of restorative yoga is that it moves us into what I would call a true stillness, which is supported with props in a great deal of physical comfort. And we can drop below this level of agitation. Because when we're sedentary often, when we're watching YouTube and when we're sitting on the couch looking at our phone, we're still, but the brain is agitated. And so in restorative yoga, we have specific positions that are targeted in order to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and deactivate the sympathetic nervous system to kind of wind down the agitation that we're all experiencing as millennials on a daily basis.
Yes. Yes. And even chatting before we hit record, that's what I love about yoga and sharing it now too is, and like you said, a different practice for every day and every different person. And, you ski and you move, and it's not like, I think people still have the stigma of yoga is, or especially restorative yoga, like, well, I'm not going to do that. You just lie around. It's like, well, maybe it is all you practice, but for a lot of us, we're still moving our bodies, and you get your yang energy, you get that fieriness from some other physical activity. To practice yoga doesn't mean that you have to just go to a vinyasa yoga class and that's the only yoga you do. Maybe yoga is skiing or hiking or climbing, and then you still add in the restorative yoga, or you add in the meditation to do all this stillness. And it's the whole yin and yang, the whole balance, which is what I feel like I am also, that is like my mission to spread, is this whole, how can you be more balanced? How can you add in something like restorative yoga or meditation when, even if, and it is, like you said, it's kind of this fine line of, we have such a sedentary culture right now and a lot of sitting and not enough movement.
Well, one thing I tell students who have asked me this question, how do I add it into my life? Or how do I, especially with a home practice, because I also think practicing at home, I'm going to say something that is potentially controversial. And I'm sorry to all of my studio owners out there. I love you. But I want to say that I think that's the sign of when someone is no longer a beginning yoga student, is when they begin to cultivate a home practice. So someone that has the ability to roll out their mat on their own when no one's looking and do 15, 20, 30 minutes of practice on a consistent basis. I think that is when we start to take one step deeper in the practice. And so we live in an era where there's a yoga studio on every corner, and it's possible to have practiced a great deal of yoga without I know people practice for years, and what they mean is I've been taking classes for years. And to me, it's also from my lineage, from my mom and from Mr. Iyengar. To me, a class is I'm going to learn something to go home and experiment on my own. So I don't like to take more than one class a week. And in fact, for me, also because where I live, I like to go take a workshop and then come home and practice for 6 months with that new input.
I love that.
But one thing I say to students who want to start, okay, so I want to start a home practice, I think we need to rewrite the rules of success. So we think that a home practice has to be 90 minutes and I have to be sweating at the end and exhausted because that's what I'm used to in the yoga studio. But I think if we redefine success as 15 minutes, we're more likely to do it. And if we disambiguate exercise from yoga, then we give ourselves the gift of getting on the mat, setting a timer, which I think is really important, set a boundary. And it really can be 15 minutes. It can be 20 minutes. That dosage of yoga will change your day. And when you say, okay, I'm going to practice for 20 minutes, and you get on your mat, if it's not your only source of exercise in that day or the next couple of days, if you're going to walk somewhere, or, I'm talking movement, like if you're going to take the stairs at work, if you're going to walk for 20 minutes during that day, then you can let your practice really be much more of an exploration and much more of a listening to what's arising in your body and what you need in that moment, as opposed to if it's your only source of exercise, which I understand, then you sort of have to force your practice into this box every time. It has to fit into that same chaturanga box. Mm-hmm. And I heard Shiva Ray at one of the best things about teaching at big yoga conferences is that when you're not teaching, I run to everybody else's classes. And so Shiva Ray said the most beautiful thing 2 weeks ago, where she said chaturanga is not the answer to every question.
Perfect. Yes. Yes. Oh, Shiva. And it's true. And we could talk forever about asana, yoga, the masses, and I love, the home practice. And that's something that I've had personally butt against, because I'll have fellow teachers, years, not recently, but you never go to yoga. You're not in yoga. I'm like, it's more than just going to a yoga studio, going to a yoga class, and it is, and like you said, it's kind of, not that there's levels, but it is sort of this other level of the understanding, I think, and the trust, you kind of develop, because there is, of course, studios, we need you. We need yoga teachers, and we educated yoga teachers, and we need yoga studios.
Yeah.
There's still plenty of millions, if not billions, of people that still have not even tried yoga. But once you learn the alignment and you feel really good, it's this new level of self-trust, not only like the exploration, which like one of my favorite, yoga is the exploration of yourself and just the exploring. And I trust myself. I can go home and I can actually apply this. And, we're so used to monkey see, monkey do in a lot of the ways that we live. And, can you actually trust that you are your best teacher, and that whole idea of pulling the mat out at home. And even if you just do some cat-cows and you stretch, or you lie on your back and all you want to do when you give yourself that window of like time, like you said, there's some great timers. You can set on a real pretty chime or gong to like bring you out of your 20 minutes. But just having that window of, I'm going to put my phone on silence. I have 20 minutes and, you don't worry about if you're going over in time. And so that kind of is a great way to segment into like, how do I start to befriend meditation? I think that's huge. I don't know if you have any of your own maybe personal ways too that you like to meditate, or getting people to befriend it more easily.
Yes, I think, as I said before, reframing, like rigging the game so you've already won, I think is a really important concept in spiritual exploration, because this is hard work. And there are so many more shiny, flashy, attractive distractions. So choosing silence, choosing to look inside, where a lot of us are hiding some things from ourselves. And there's some unprocessed emotional work that we don't want to do, or skeletons that we don't want to look at. And often in that silence, things can bubble up. So I completely recognize, I mean, when I first started to practice on my own, there were a lot of times I would just get on my mat and cry, just like start moving, do a hip opener, and then just start, it was just the experience of shutting the door and letting things arise was so powerful for me in the beginning. So that's why I say set a timer, then you've already won. It's not like I have to do Ashtanga first series in order to say that I've practiced today.
Right.
So with meditation, meditation is like phenomenally simple. The technique of it. What I practice is sit with your spine long in a comfortable position so that your body can get out of your way. So there's absolutely no hierarchy or shame. If you need to sit in a chair, if you want to sit with lots of props on the floor, it doesn't matter. The point is that your body is not going to be poking you. Then you set a timer, and I would say seriously to start with 5 minutes. And you pick something that is a present tense sensory experience. So you can pick the breath, or you can pick the sound around you, and you just keep bringing your attention back to that. And so that's really simple. I just explained meditation to you in 34 seconds. So it's the doing of it that's tough. And it's not just the doing of it, because actually sitting there, I don't think is that hard either. It's the kind of remembering to do it. It's like that moment where you start. It's like starting it every day. That's the tough part. The actual doing. I don't know if you've had that experience. It happens to me so often where I'll have an email that's been sitting in my inbox, poking me in the eye for a week, and I don't know what to do. And I'm pushing it away. And then finally I say, today I'm going to reply. And then it takes 7 minutes, like 3 minutes. It's like this has been like ruminating around and creating storms in my mind. And then the actual writing it was like nothing. It just happened today for one of our next online courses. Our editor had sent me a video to review. I'd been sitting there for a week, and I just hadn't opened the video and hadn't reviewed it and gave her my comments. And, she can't move forward until and then I just did it before our call. Now it's like 12 minutes.
Right.
So it's the getting on the cushion, number one. That's really like, I think we need to remember that when we're starting the practice of meditation, because in a way, I think people don't realize, it's kind of like they don't realize where the peak of the mountain is. And the peak of the mountain is getting on the cushion, starting the meditation. And then it's actually downhill doing the practice. And people sort of, I think, assume that if getting on the cushion is only here, like how hard is it going to be actually do the practice? They don't realize. So I think that's one thing to remember. And the other thing I wanted to say is that when you're sitting there, and I like to close my eyes just because I think it's easier. And otherwise I'm like distracted by looking at the dust on my floor. Like I need to vacuum. So when you're sitting there, of course, in 5 minutes, your mind is going to drift. Like you're going to start thinking about your set of 5 things or your 3 things, which is, footnote, interesting to start to notice what your default mode is. Like I'm always thinking about like what I'm going to cook for dinner, or like what I'm going to eat for like the next meal, like planning out what I'm going to eat. Then I like to think about my bank account. Obviously I like to do it because it's what I do all the time. Like thinking about my bank account, like, did I get that check from that person? Or like, do I have to pay my credit card bill yet? Or, like, these kind of worry questions that you have. So it's 100% likely that when you sit, you're going to start thinking about those things, whatever they are for you. And the victory in meditation is not that, which I think is a kind of confusion most people have, a misperception, is that the idea is to sit there for 5 minutes and have no thoughts. Just like impossible. But the victory is that moment when you realize, I'm thinking about lunch. I'm going to come back to the sensation of my breath. Just going to come back into my body, back into the room, back into just this moment right here. And it's that turnaround moment, which I like to call the boomerang moment. Like, that's the moment that we need to celebrate and keep practicing when we turn around. Because if, a boomerang that doesn't turn around is just a frisbee. So like, it's the turning around, because in a larger sense, the same for yoga. I always say asana practice is putting your body in weird shapes and then trying to stay centered, which is great practice for your life. Because when you're, with your mother-in-law, that's kind of like being in a weird shape. And then like, can you stay centered? Or when you're having an argument with your husband, your partner, like, can you come back? What's the most important right now? Am I going to escalate, which is one of my patterns, right? Am I going to say like, well, because you didn't do the laundry when you said you would, like, does that mean we should get a divorce? Like this, right? So it's that boomerang moment, which it's literally practicing. And when we're sitting there for our 5 minutes, it's just like, oh, I was thinking about this. Now I'm back here. Oh, I was thinking about this. Now I'm back here, which we can then apply. And this starts to happen quite quickly into your daily life, where all the good stuff is happening. Because if you're just meditating for 5 minutes, that's like a nothing percentage of your whole day. But then what you will begin to notice with consistent practice is that boomerang moment will start to happen when you're in a completely different situation, where someone will cut in front of you at the grocery store line, and you'll have this you'll kind of watch this flare come up, and then you'll have this kind of flicker of choice, and the boomerang will come back, and you'll be able to sort of decide in that moment whether you're going to get angry and let this ruin your afternoon, or whether you're going to choose to let the person go in front of you.
Love that. Yes, I love the boomerang moment. I love that whole, it's such a great visualization. I might have to use that.
Please.
I just really, like, I love how it really does give that sense of, it's not about just staying focused, and like the victory is in not even the coming back, but literally just that moment of shift. And
when you realize, I heard this great image, which I'll share with you, of meditation. It's like you're sitting on the bank of a river and you're watching the boats go by, which are the thoughts. And then suddenly you realize you're on a boat. And then you get back into the river, on the bank, and you're watching the boat, and then you're on the next boat, right? So it's that jump, which we're trying to play with when we go unconsciously into, and as I was saying, into our patterns.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's all up here too. It's the brain, and the brain loves to think, and it loves to do all these logistical things, and just like anything, it's a practice. And I always try to relate that with yoga, or even getting into any sort of anything. You're not, unless maybe you have a naturally given, born given gift here to meditate very easily. Like anything you pick up, you're not an excellent chef right away. You're not like, a gold medal winning, we all have to get better. And so it's like meditation or yoga, like when people are just starting out, it's give yourself time, know that it is just going to be a practice, and you don't have to be perfect at first. It doesn't have to be the best experience ever. You might be sobbing on, your yoga mat for a while, and it's okay too, because that's definitely needed. I want to make sure we fit in before we wrap up and we hear about your gift. Just the future of learning yoga and meditation, like virtually, some of the ways that we're seeing. I feel like every time I turn around, not just new apps showing up, but literally new apps and new websites for yoga and meditation that teachers can upload their own, which is great. But it's almost like, where's this going? So what do you think?
I think we're living in a fantastic, wonderful time. So there are 1 billion people online. And in the next 30 years, I think that number is going to double and then double again. So we're now, and therefore the life online is going to exponentially increase in terms of the connections and the learning and the sharing that's going on and will go on in the next, in our working lifetime. So what I love about online learning for yoga is that I see it as a way of democratizing and spreading this powerful technology for self-examination, for introspection, and for silence. Because, as I was saying, my mom, when she went in the 70s, let me start earlier. So her teacher, Mr. Iyengar, went to his uncle, Krishnamacharya, and studied with him. He moved to his house, lived with him, learned yoga from him, then left, started teaching in Pune. Then a generation later, my mom goes to Pune physically to study with Mr. Iyengar for 1 month a year, to learn from him and to come home and share that with her students. Now, a generation later, I'm learning from my mom, and the way I'm sharing is on our online platform, teaching online, and people have access to it from all around the world. And so I think, in 60, 70 years ago, most yoga teachers in India wouldn't accept women students at all. Mm-hmm. And now, you can live in Brisbane, Australia, you can live in Alaska. And we have, for example, something I love doing once a month. We have these office hours mentorship telephone calls where it's targeted for yoga teachers, and it's 1 hour live with my mom, and people get on and ask questions from all around the world. And they're yoga teachers, and they're asking about honest questions about their struggles teaching yoga. And through the magic of the internet, we're all connecting and sharing. So I think it's an incredibly hopeful medium for sharing our work. And I think as a yoga teacher, what's so important, because something that mom says, which I'm really trying to believe, and she can say that, of course, having taught for 45 years, is that when people come to your class, they're not coming for what you know, they're coming for who you are. And, that's just like a bowl of honey poured on top of my head. It's so soothing to hear that I am enough already, because many teachers think they maybe don't know enough. And I think the idea to become a teacher is, in fact, to become a professional student. And so that's what I love about, our platform, Lassiter.yoga, is specifically targeted towards yoga teacher education and continuing education, because, as you know, most teacher trainings are the 200-hour, which is the wonderful baseline. But if we want to continue this work, we have to continue to practice and continue to feed ourselves, first and foremost, with interesting, high quality, new ideas about yoga. And then once we've taken them in, digested them, practiced them, experimented with them, then we're able to share them in our own unique way to our students.
I love that. Yeah, and that's the history of yoga, just the whole lineage. As with any sort of learning, I think sometimes we can just sort of get off, or we think we have all this information. But I think that's such a powerful part of the online platform where, anybody can Google a Wikipedia article, but to still connect face to face and have not just a video to watch, but to have the forum, like you said, and have the calls and have the ability to have, it's what I tell people about, we'll pop onto my page, at least knowing that I will be here to chime back, or I do Skype sessions or whatever. So keep watching your videos, but do they talk back to you? Do they give you feedback? And it's great, however people want to experience it, but just having these online abilities now to still have that lineage of teacher and student, and knowing that, we are all students, but what a neat way.
I remember, my childhood was really idyllic, that my mom was always teaching yoga retreats in the summers, and she would just sort of drag us along. And I remember once she was teaching with François Raoul, who's a wonderful Iyengar teacher in the States, and they were teaching in the south of France, and there was a man there. It was such a strong memory. I was maybe 16, and he was from former Yugoslavia, maybe Bulgaria, and he had driven to the south of France to take this yoga workshop. And he said this was his first yoga class ever. he had been studying from Mr. Iyengar's book, Light on Yoga, for 5 years. And now he'd been practicing at home with the book. And now he decided to come to a workshop. And it's such a beautifully touching story about his devotion to learning. But I think of him, that image often, and that man now would be able to take so many courses online without leaving his home. And so I think that's a really kind of, those are the people that I'm hoping we're reaching.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love it. So yoga teachers should check out Lassiter.yoga.
Mm-hmm. And what we have launching, because I know this is time-based, this your summit, at the end of December, but you can already pre-order it for a discount. We're launching a course on January 1st, which is called the Shavasana Intensive. And it's 21 days of Shavasana.
Yes, I love that.
After the holidays, you can just reset yourself for the new year.
Great timing. Oh, cool. Yes. So as long as you're following you or your mother, right, on getting on the email list, which in a moment you can share your free gift. So I'm sure if they're getting your free gift, then they'll probably also be able to stay in touch with the Shavasana experience. Oh, I'll be there. That sounds delightful. And that's what I love about you too, which I didn't share yet, but finding Lizzie on Instagram in the world, like we mentioned earlier, just all yoga poses and whatever little bikini yoga poses, and that's all great. But Lizzie's feed is full of just seated meditation photos, and it was such a refreshing find to just see picture after picture of just chilling out, And so if you haven't checked her out on Instagram, find Lizzie at lizzie.lassiter. So definitely worth the social media follow there. So last little piece here, your free gift is delightful. Please tell us more about what you're offering. All you have to do, guys, is click the little link and you'll get your free download. But please.
So I was talking a little bit about seated meditation, which is really about the mind. And what I'm sharing with you as a free download is a guided Shavasana, which is corpse pose. The end of a yoga class, you might know it. This download is a guided version that's a little bit longer, a restorative version. And how I think of it is it's sort of meditation for the body. So you're going to set yourself up in a position of extreme comfort. So you will not be able to resist relaxation. And I'm going to guide you into reaching a state of Shavasana, which is so delicious and so healing. And it's a form of empathy for your stressed out and tired body, which is, newsflash, the same as your stressed out and tired brain.
Yeah.
Because the mind and the body might be connected.
They just might be connected. Maybe that's what we're talking about. Oh, I love it. That sounds so good. And in case people have no idea what restorative yoga is, I mean, everybody needs to do it. But I mean, you could use blankets and pillows. Basically, you're uber supported, right, with cushions and whether you have actual bolsters. But really, like blankets, towels, pillows, those can all work in terms of getting set up at home for a really yummy Shavasana experience.
So they're just like you can buy Lululemon pants and go take your yoga class, or you could just wear sweatpants from, Target. You can, of course, buy beautiful, perfect props for restorative, but essentially the important thing is the energetic signature of the body. And I'll talk about that on the recording. If you go to livingwiththebuddha.com, you trade me your email address and you get the recording, and you can use anything from your home to create this certain energetic position, which is going to scientifically proven. It's a scientifically proven position, which is going to trigger this state of deep relaxation.
Yes, that's what we all need. A nice big Shavasana, especially any of you leaving yoga class early and not getting it. Take your Shavasana at home at least. So we could definitely keep going with this, but time is of the essence today. If you had like one main statement or, final thing, if people are just, getting here to the very end, like, I don't even know what to remember, what's the one main thing that you want to leave the audience with today?
Hmm.
It could be a couple little things.
I think I would just say, 5 minutes is enough. That's the minimum viable dose of meditation is 5 minutes. And I mean that honestly. It's not a patronizing number. If you sit down and close your eyes without taking in anything new for 5 minutes a day with a timer, it will change your life. And so I want to encourage you to take that as a challenge, to try it for, you can make it a game, try it for 21 days. There's all kinds of apps. I love Headspace. I'm not sponsored, but I know that a lot of people have had a lot of success with that app. I think it's well done. So the takeaway is just to make it easy. Let yourself win, because that's your mind. Your mind is really good at talking you out of your practice. So it's your mind that tells you you don't have time. And it's your mind that tells you, oh, 5 minutes is nothing. You have to do it for 40 minutes or, just leave your mind alone. Just sit down for 5 minutes and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes. 5 minutes. That's it. That's nothing. Well, thank you again so much. And everyone will receive, you should have all of Lizzie's info, download her free gift, stay tuned for her Shavasana experience, find her awesome feed on Instagram. She's on all the social media. She's got some great YouTube videos too, if you haven't checked those out. So all that should be in this email, and I hope you feel more amplified living in this life, in this body, in this mind. A little more balance and connection, hopefully added to your day-to-day. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Rebekka. Namaste.
Welcome. Namaste.